Hello, and welcome to our lecture today on the Bhīṣma, Droṇa, Śalya, and Sauptika Parvans of the Mahābhārata. I'm entitling this one Utter Chaos, because these are the battle books, and things don't go well. To kind of give you an idea of this, a lot of people are going to die in the stories I'm going to tell. They're going to die kind of tragically and ironically. One of the difficulties with the Mahābhārata is even all of these supposed bad guys, if you read deeply and you read widely in the Mahābhārata, all of them are great warriors, mostly are incredibly honorable. Even Duryodhana, like the big bad guy of the Kauravas, has a bunch of wonderful stories about how he's also a great hero and a great king. So as you think through these stories, remember the incredible ambiguity. Ambiguity is kind of a hallmark of our Hindu epics. Remember that Ravana was a great king despite being a demon, and Rama, kind of a jerk, or at least he was a type of masculine hero that we don't understand today. But I would say even within the text, the authors of the earliest Sanskrit narratives had difficulties with his ambivalent behavior, especially involved with his treatment of his wife and his killing of Vali. But you don't need me to get all excited about that again. So let's get into it. So the Bhīṣma Parvan is our first text. Now, all of these books today, except for the last one, are going to be named after the hero slash villain who is killed at the end of each story, generally. So they start out by setting the rules of combat. Now, there will be no unarmed men attacked by an armed person. No unarmored person will be attacked. Chariots will only attack other chariots. Elephants will only, and elephant riders will only attack other elephants. There will be no striking of fallen men. There will be no striking or attacking of someone who is withdrawing from combat. Also, there will be no fighting at night, and everyone is to willingly withdraw as the sun sets. There should be no striking below the navel. We'll see that all of these rules are going to break down. Remember, I talked to you earlier about how there are 4 ages in the Hindu sort of system of time. Now, as we are in the Kali Yuga here in the Mahābhārata, this is the time when Dharma is bad. It is, well, not necessarily bad. It's topsy-turvy. It's unclear. And the Ramayana, you're in the Treta Yuga, the 3rd Yuga. So Dharma is a little clearer. Here, Doniger says over and over again, Dharma is subtle, sukshma, which means hard to understand, find, minute, fleeting. So the Dharma is odd here. The Dharma is reversed. Dharma is a mess. The forces of good must do wrong, must do evil, must commit sins to win. In fact, as one of the characters says, victory, Krishna says this, victory is justice, which is a hard thing to really sit with. And one of the reasons why I really like the Mahābhārata is this ambiguity. The Ramayana might prescribe the behavior for a better age, but the Mahābhārata is our age. This is our world that our characters are in. The enemy will win unless the good guys cheat, and they have to win because that is justice and that is righteous. The enemy, on the other hand, we are told throughout, are told that they are outmatched, that in fact, the Pandavas are better warriors and are better prepared than the Kauravas. So you notice that back and forth, you have all sorts of contradictory images, you have contradictory statements. The Dharma is subtle, the story is subtle. So it is clear that this is more than about just wars, but it is about the difficulties of justice and the difficulties of trying to do good in an upside down world. So before the battle even begins, each of the Pandava brothers will ask permission to fight and strike their teachers. Remember, Bhīṣma and Droṇa were their teachers. Bhīṣma and Droṇa, who fight on the side of the Kauravas, love the Pandavas, maybe love them even more. But Bhīṣma and Droṇa trained all of the 100 Kaurava brothers and the 5 Pandava brothers. These are brothers, they are cousins, they are clansmen, they are so closely connected. They've been raised together. Now they come to kill one another. There will be 18 days of combat, and we'll go through all of them here, leading to an incredible tragedy, which is where we will leave our heroes at the end of this lecture. So In the Bhīṣma Parvan, you find a long section called the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord. Now, this section of the Mahābhārata is arguably the most important scripture to Hindus. In fact, you'd see that Gandhi regularly referenced the Mahābhārata. I hear people and politicians in Hindi and English regularly invoke the Bhagavad Gita. We find manuscripts throughout, and that's by which I mean like the handwritten manuscripts on palm leaves and paper from very early times. I find large amounts of copies of the Bhagavad Gita in manuscript repositories around India. I would say they're actually more important texts for Hinduism, but when you're talking about, especially local Hinduism, but when you're talking about like sort of pan-world Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita is claimed to be one of the most important texts. So generally, if you talk to a Hindu, they'll tell you that their primary scripture is the Bhagavad Gita, and that is just a chapter of the Mahābhārata. Now, I was drinking one night at a local establishment in Denver, and I was talking to my friend Luke, who's a bartender and somewhat of a legend in the punk rock scene in Denver. And he told me a story about how he took a whole bunch of mushrooms, or maybe LSD, one day, and he went snowboarding. He brought with him a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. And he said that he spent his day snowboarding in the backcountry, in the mountains, in the Rockies, and sitting on a rock and reading the Gita and looking out at how beautiful it was. And he said it was one of the best days of his life. Now, far be it from me to endorse snowboarding, because I don't think that's a good plan at all, or skiing for that matter. It's a good way to get yourself killed. But it is a good story, and it tells you that the Gita can find you wherever you're at. And I love the Gita. In fact, most classes on Hinduism would spend 3 weeks on the Gita. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes. So the Gita does a bunch of things. The story and the setting is that Arjuna looks out upon all of his cousins, his classmen, his clansmen, his teachers, and he just cannot fight. He throws down his weapons and he says, I can't fight. I can't kill my family members. I can't kill my teachers. I'm going to go be a monk. I'm going to go to the forest. I'm going to renounce. I'm done. I'm out of here. And Krishna lovingly turns to him. I'm going to curse here. Lovingly turns to him, touches him in the face and says, oh, dear Arjuna, I love you so much. Don't be such a freaking pussy. And he says, stand up. You're a warrior. This is what you do. You've been killing people as long as you've been living. You are a murderous, well, not really murderous, but you're a man-slaughtering dude. Your whole thing is killing people. So how can you suddenly say, I'm going to go be a monk? You are not a monk. Krishna is arguing that all of the people before him are already dead. He cannot change what's going to happen. He cannot change fate. His dharma as a warrior is to kill, but it's also to die in battle. So he shouldn't fear death. And kṣatriyas, as you see, they do not fear death. They welcome death. They hope death, and death in battle will be the end of their lives. And they engage in a sort of warrior's yoga of conscious death that I'm going to talk about in just a second. The thing is, and this is the point that Krishna is really making, you have to do your own dharma. Now, Krishna argues that a person must act with renunciation. You don't go off and renounce unless you're, a Brahmin who's in that stage of their life. You need to act with renunciation. Well, what does that mean? It means you act in the world, but you renounce the fruits of all your actions. You act without worrying about the results. You do what's right for what's right's sake. You do what you need to do because you're you. So the goal here is we have to realize that our essential self that is identical to God and is identical to everything, that will never die. That comes and goes as it pleases. We realize that the self is vast. The self is unknown. The self is cosmic. That self is never killed and it never kills. This is a yoga that I like to call V-yoga. And we'll talk about this more when we get to our yoga unit. Yoga means union or junction. V-yoga means disjunction. The yoga that Krishna is telling you to do isn't necessarily union with God per se. It is removing your connection to the fruits of your results, realizing that the self is eternal, and not being connected to this finite version of yourself, all the while still acting. So folks like to say that Krishna describes three yogas and three types of yoga in the Mahābhārata. These are karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. I misspelled that. So karma yoga is action. The yoga is you act while renouncing any fruits of your results. You act in life, and that is your yoga without being attached. Jnana yoga is like meditation and trying to understand the truth of your mind and the truth of existence. Bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion. So being completely devoted to the Lord and to God, that is your yoga. Notice none of these are bending your bodies into strange directions. In fact, if you dig through the Bhagavad Gita, I locate 7 types of yoga that include jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge. This will be similar to Sankhya, and we're going to talk about Sankhya later. So remember the word Sankhya. Then you have karma yoga. And I meet people all the time in India, and I'll say like I'll be in a monastery, and I'll say to these Hindus, I'm like, well, what's the yoga you practice? What's the meditation you do? And they'll say, I do karma yoga, which means I just work in the monastery. So when somebody says they're a karma yogin, they're a karma yogi, they're someone who does a yoga that is active service. And there's bhakti yoga, a yoga of devotion to the God. Buddhi yoga. Now, this is a yoga of meditation. Buddhi is your mind and awakening your mind. Buddha, Buddha, the one who is awakened, like Buddhi yoga, the yoga of the mind. Furthermore, you also have dhyana yoga, which is a yoga of condensed meditation. Finally, you have atmasamaya yoga. Atmasamaya yoga is a sacrifice of the senses and the actions of the life breaths into the fire of self-control, which is a little long-winded, but you see what I'm saying? So there are all types of yogas in here, but you will regularly hear people say that there are 3 types of yoga that are taught in the Bhagavad Gita, which is, and the 3 that are usually said to be taught are karma yoga, the yoga of action, jnana yoga, the yoga of mental study and the intellect, and bhakti yoga, the yoga of the heart and devotion. Now, this is not modern postural yoga. This is not what you see in strip malls and in the basement of the YMCA or on DVD videos. That type of yoga is really only about 150 years old, and nothing like it we really actually find at this era of Hinduism. But we'll get into these issues later. So what is yoga, in fact? Well, yoga that we see in the Mahābhārata, it enlivens rituals. So you're doing a ritual and then you engage in yoga to make the ritual more powerful. Or Kunti did yoga to make her power of her mantra that bore her those sons more potent and more powerful. Also, we're going to read, and I'll talk about over and over again, a type of warrior yoga. You could call it Vira yoga if you wish. Warrior yoga links one's mind to the solar orb, so the orb of the sun, and then at death, you project the soul out of you and go into the sun and then go beyond the sun into the land of the warriors, the heroic dead. We will see several of our characters who died do just this in the Mahābhārata today. Yoga means to yoke or to hitch. And these yogis are hitching their rig to the sun to go to the land of the warriors. So it's as if you're hitching up your horse to your chariot and traveling through the sun to the land of the warriors. Now, Krishna, toward the end of the text, reveals his universal form. Remember, Krishna is not necessarily God. He is God, but he doesn't know it sometimes. Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't. Sometimes he's just the coolest guy on the planet that everybody loves. Sometimes he's just a really bad hombre. Sometimes he's just like this really cool guy. And other times he reveals that he is this essential God or essential principle of creation that pervades all things. So Krishna reveals his incredible universal form, and it is terrifying and glorious. And Arjun is like, whoa, I need to really be more careful. I've seen some stuff now. So Arjuna learns devotion to the Lord, who is found in all things, who is death and life. All is in the hands of the divine, no matter what happens. And the divine is in all things. Everything that we see is illusory because everything we see is actually just divine. Upon detonating the first nuclear bomb, Robert Oppenheimer said, now I am death, the destroyer of worlds, quoting the Bhagavad Gita, in fact. remembering this scene as he watched the explosion of the first atom bomb, and he thought of Krishna revealing his universal form. So what's going on here in the battle as the battle progresses? Well, first, like I said, we have 18 days of combat, and each day gets more and more bloody and unregulated. There are huge losses, and the end of this is, in fact, like a self-induced genocide. The books in these sections, like I'd said before, are all titled after a character who dies. Now, you're also going to see quite a few magical weapons. These really only get started on like day 4. Now, magical weapons are perfectly legitimate in battle, but there's sort of like an arms race to see who can have the best magical weapons and which can be used at the other times that generally leads toward more and more destruction. Remember that these magical weapons aren't just like somebody gives a guy a magic sword. They get these magical weapons by doing penances and showing devotion to gods who grant them these gifts. These weapons exist as physical things, but they also exist as sort of mantras or magical spells that they speak, or they exist within the hero, and the hero can put that magical energy to create destruction into anything he so chooses. Yes, so the magical arms in general will precipitate sort of the greatest tragedy that happens on the 18th day, as we will see, which will leave all the Kshatriya women with their fetuses dead, and sadly and horrifically, all barren. So we're still in the story of Bhīṣma. We're on day 4. And we see that, you may remember, Bhīma had a son. When the boys were wandering after they were presumed dead, he took up with a Rakshasi, so a wilderness spirit. Rakshasa means something like a fierce protector. So he took up with a woman who was a fierce protector spirit named Hidimba. And they had a child named Gatotkacha, who was incredibly powerful. On the 4th day, he shows up. And he shows up because his son, Bhīma, had been injured. I tell you this now because he's going to come up again. I just want to make a point that on the 4th day, he shows up. Now, while we are in battle, we have Bhīṣma. We remember that Bhīṣma is like the oldest, toughest, baddest ass guy ever. So at one point, Bhīṣma is wandering around, just killing everything in sight. And Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna is Arjuna's charioteer, come upon him. And Arjuna doesn't fight him that hard. Krishna gets really pissed off. And we see this, and you'll see it depicted over here on the left. We see this come up in art quite a bit. Now remember, Krishna said he's not going to fight. He jumps down off of the chariot and he rushes Bhīṣma and he gets his chakra. Chakra just means wheel. Imagine this is like a spinning circular frisbee blade that will just demolish anything in its path, that he can throw like a frisbee and basically behead anyone he wants. So Krishna is all pissy. He jumps off the chariot. He goes and rushes Bhīṣma with his chakra going. But Arjuna stops him and says, whoa, 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 okay, I will get this guy. I will fight him in battle. I'll kill him. I'll find a way. And Krishna backs off. But what's interesting here is Bhīṣma says, if Krishna had killed me, that would be good. I will be happy to die by the Lord's hand. I would be happy to die from Krishna. Now, remember, Bhīṣma has been granted 2 wishes, sort of from the gods. Those wishes are that he can never be slain in battle, and also that he can choose his own time of death. However, he's also taken a vow to never combat a woman or anyone who has once been a woman. In fact, on the 9th day of battle, we read, I should put this quote up here, surrounded on all sides, yet unvanquished by that large body of car warriors. Car warriors means charioteers. Bhīṣma blazed like a fire in the midst of a forest. His car was his hearth. His bow constituted the flames. His swords, darts, and his maces were the fuel. His shafts were the spark of the fire. He took the lives of the opposing warriors like the sun sucking the energies of all things with his rays during the summer. So all of the people he killed are as if he is taking his weapons like sacrificial ladles and offering them into the fire. Once again, the death in battle and the one who kills someone in battle is said to be like offering butter or offerings or oblations into the fire. Again, we see sacrificial imagery. We are in the world of the Vedas still, even though the world seems kind of different. Now, Bhīṣma is tricky. And now we're going to get to Bhīṣma dying. Bhīṣma long ago had competed in a competition to win women who would be his wives. Now, remember, he'd taken a vow of chastity and had vowed to never rule. So he wins these 3 women, and he's going to give them to his brother, and they will become his brother's wives, and his brother is a king. Well, so he has Ambika, who is the wife of Dhritarashtra, or is the mother of Dhritarashtra. Then we have Ambalika, who is the mother of Pandu, and we have another one named Amba. Now, Ambika has a child via Vyasa, our main character, and he is born blind, so he's Dhritarashtra. Ambalika, and that happens because she closed her eyes so tight because Vyasa is so scary. Ambalika, who bears Pandu, turns white because Vyasa is so scary. Thus, Pandu is born pale. He's white. Amba's a little different. On his way to deliver these 3 brides to his brother, Bhīṣma talks to Amba and she says, "Let me go. I don't want this." And he says, "Okay, fine." It's complicated, but he lets her go. She runs back to the king who she was previously in love with, and he says, "I don't want you. You've been with someone else." He banishes her. She runs off to the forest. Eventually, she vows to destroy Bhīṣma, and she's reborn. She's reborn as a girl, and she's born as the daughter of Drupada. But Drupada has her raised as a boy. In time, she's married off. Her wife finds out that she's actually a girl, and she runs off into the forest again, and she performs a sort of sex swap with a powerful Yaksha creature who lives in the wilderness. Now, the Pandavas are in a hard place. Remember, this is Shikandi is Amba reborn, the son/daughter of Drupada. The Pandavas are in a hard place. They keep losing. They realize that as long as Bhīṣma is fighting, there's no way they can win. They go to Bhīṣma and they say, "How can I kill you?" Now remember, Bhīṣma loves the Pandavas. He's bound to fight for the Kauravas by his duty and his honor, but he still advises the Pandavas. And he says, "Look, the only way I can die is by my own choice. And the only person I can't fight is someone who used to be a woman. Shikandi used to be a woman." On the 10th day, Arjuna takes Shikandi and puts her forward and says, "You go rush Bhīṣma. Don't worry, don't be afraid." He or she, he's a he at this point, runs forward and strikes him in the chest with arrows. At this point, the rest of the Pandavas attack. And at one point, Arjuna hits the fatal blow with his arrow. And Bhīṣma knows it. He's like, "Wait a minute, Shikandi immobilized me, but you killed me. I guess it's okay, but it's still kind of BS." There's a lot of that happens in this story. The rest of the Pandavas attack. They shoot him so full of arrows, he's like a porcupine. And like he falls down, and Arjuna actually later shoots arrows in the air that will come down and like make a V-shaped thing that will be his pillow on what he calls a warrior's bed. Now, Bhīṣma chooses the time of his death, and he decides to stick around. He lies on his warrior bed that's made up of all those arrows, and he kind of hangs out and talks to people until he decides the appropriate astrological time for him to abandon the earth. He will give various dialogues for a very long time. Now, what is it describes he's doing? It's said in the text that he has dedicated himself to yoga that is taught in the Upanishads. Remember the Upanishads that started talking about renunciation and meditation and whatnot? And he's very much a renunciate. Remember, he was celibate, but he's still engaged in battle. So there's some ambiguities, as always. At one point, while he's lying there, Karna comes to him and says, "Look, I was your student. Why are you always so mad at me?" And Bhīṣma says, "Look, I always loved you, but I know who you are. I know that you're actually a Pandava. I know that you're Kunti's son. I was trying to challenge you so you'd stop being a moron and go hang out with your brothers and do what's right instead of hanging out with this jerk Duryodhana who's got you up to no good all the time." Karna, of course, being Karna, says, "I must do my duty. I must be loyal to Duryodhana." And thus ends the Bhīṣma Parvan, and we're on to the Droṇa Parvan. So Drona's going to die here. And I love this image of him here sitting in meditation. with his soul projecting outward and as he sits on his chariot. Anyway, Droṇa becomes the commander. Now, a little backstory on Droṇa that we haven't been to yet. Droṇa is actually a Brahmin who became the greatest of all warriors and teachers. His son, Ashwatthama, and we will meet him again, is also a Brahmin. So here, there's a thing. What are these Brahmins doing being warriors? Now, that's a problem because it violates sort of caste roles. But we can also argue that the power of a Brahmin is so much by their magical power that it gives them an unfair edge in contrast. Notice that when we were looking in the Ramayana, there was no sense of people doing the wrong thing in the wrong caste. That's very much a big deal here in the Mahābhārata. Some people say that the whole engine of conflict in the Mahābhārata is kṣatriyas acting like Brahmins and Brahmins acting like kṣatriyas. I think there's more to it than that. All right. Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu is the son of Arjuna, and Arjuna was married to a bunch of women, but he was also married to Krishna's sister. We'll see that Abhimanyu's son is Parikshit, and Parikshit will be the only kshatriya that will survive this conflict. And Parikshit's son, Janamejaya, does the snake sacrifice that frames our whole tale. Droṇa, being a great tactical wizard for that matter, he sets out an array of soldiers in a circle. And this is depicted really well in Peter Brook, I think. And this is the 12th day. Arjuna has been driven off by a distraction, so he's not nearby. They can't figure out how to get through this sort of circle of Kaurava warriors, but Abhimanyu knows a trick that was taught to him by his father for how to penetrate the circle. However, he doesn't know how to get back out. He goes in and he breaks the circle. He's moving through the ranks. He's laying waste to everybody in sight. Abhimanyu is a bad dude. He's messing people up. Now, the other warriors are behind him, the other Pandavas, but there's a guy named Jayadratha. We'll see him. His name means something like victorious chariot. So Jayadratha blocks the other Pandavas from following Abhimanyu. And for his actions, Arjuna is going to kill him. So Abhimanyu fights and fights, and the Pandavas follow, but they're cut off from him. And he goes deeper and deeper until he's at the center of the ring of all the warriors, and he's surrounded by the best of the Kauravas. Now, Abhimanyu is not a seasoned warrior. He's a ferocious warrior, but he's still a very young man. He's surrounded and killed. In fact, he's struck down by Dushasana's son. Dushasana was the guy that was really rude to Draupadi and dragged her in like a slave woman into the court of the Kauravas. Dushasana's son kills Abhimanyu after Abhimanyu has been knocked down. As he's getting up, he's struck and killed. Again, unsportsmanlike conduct. You're not supposed to strike a fallen opponent. Abhimanyu has slaughtered tons and tons and tons of the Kauravas, but he dies tragically, and we're going to see a few more tragic deaths as we go. In the end, Arjuna finds out about this. He'd noticed ill portents in the air and everything had been bad, and he gets home and he finds out his son has been dead, and he's tragically just bereft. And Krishna's looking, and he's realized that this is like his grandnephew is dead too. Krishna looks to Arjuna and says, there is no doubt that Abhimanyu has ascended to those regions that are reserved for righteous persons. The fate is coveted by all brave warriors, that they may die in battle facing their foes. Warrior yoga, again, he died in battle gloriously like a kshatriya. And we don't see specifically that he does yoga as he dies, but Krishna says his soul has gone up and is reunited with all the great warriors who have died in battle in this sort of like warrior heaven. We have a few other sad stories. This is a great little image from the Amarchitakatha. As I told you, that's the comic book of the Mahābhārata. One day I'd like to assign that, the whole thing for class. That'd be great. So Karna is off killing tons of people, but Bhīṣma comes up and beats him down, and all sorts of badness is going to come out from this. So Karna's knocked out. Bhīṣravas is a Kaurava, and in the midst of Bhīṣma knocking down Karna, we have Bhīṣravas grab Satyaki, who's a Pandava. Krishna tells Arjuna that Bhīṣravas has to be stopped, that Satyaki has to live. Arjuna hides and shoots Bhīṣma from a concealed position, and he cuts off his arm. Bhīṣma says, "This is such an insult. I wasn't fighting with you. You cut my arm off from a distance. I'm gonna die. This stinks." So he lays down a bed of arrows and he sits upon it and he engages in yoga. He gazes at the sun, again, the solar orb. He thinks of the Upanishads. We're in the world of the philosophy of the Upanishads, and he desires to go to the land of Brahma. He wants to go beyond the solar orb to the land of Brahma, the great Lord and creator. At this point, Satyaki comes by and cuts his head off. Again, sketch mode. Don't worry, other bad things happen. Jayadratha, I'm sorry if you can't see this, but this is Krishna shooting a decapitated head that is up in the air. Jayadratha was the guy that effectively kept the other Pandavas from protecting Abhimanyu, and Arjuna vows to kill him. Now, Jayadratha at his birth was prophesied to become a great king. However, it was also prophesied that he would be beheaded in contact. His father set a curse. The curse is that whoever had caused the head to fall to the ground would have his own head burst. Now, advised by Krishna, Arjuna decapitates him with an arrow, but then he's he keeps shooting arrows so that the head stays in the air. So he's shooting these arrows to carry that head from a far distance. Where is he trying to get the head to? Well, Jayadratha's father had taken to the forest and was meditating, and Arjuna causes his son's own head to fall upon his lap. He rises from meditation because he was in such deep meditation that he didn't notice this happen. And when he stands, the head falls to the ground. The head having fallen to the ground, Jayadratha's father's own head exploded. I like them apples. It's a rough life. Sadly, here we come to another tragic tale. You may remember Ghatotkacha, the son of Bhīṣma. Now, Ghatotkacha rolls in on this day, and he's accompanied by an army of Rakshasas, so an army of other forest demons, and he's riding a chariot that's decked out with like skins of bears and skulls, and he's just laying waste. Bhima's son Ghatotkacha is just kicking wholesale butt. He and his army, in fact, as the day gets shorter, get more and more powerful because Rakshasas are more powerful at night. And folks are no longer honoring the rule that they won't fight at night. The sun sets, and Ghatotkacha and his army are ferocious. They are killing everybody. Now, Karna has a magical weapon. Karna has a magical weapon that he received from Indra. This is called the Shakti weapon. Remember that Indra had come to him and asked him to cut off all of his armor that he was born with because he's the son of the sun, the Surya, the sun. Now, he does so, and Indra gives him this Shakti weapon. Now, he's been saving this weapon. Karna has been saving this weapon to kill Arjuna. Arjuna is Indra's son. Thereby, we can do the implications that Indra's weapon could kill his own son, Arjuna. As the night comes and the demon army rages, Arjuna urges Ghatotkacha, and Krishna tells him to do this, once again, to challenge Karna in single battle. When he does so, Karna releases the Shakti weapon, and it kills Ghatotkacha. Everyone is really saddened. But Krishna's happy. Being Krishna, he knows something. Because without that Shakti weapon, Arjuna can now kill Karna. Karna is merely human. That weapon that could have killed Arjuna is now out of play. Sadly, here comes the death of Droṇa coming last at the end of this book, the Droṇa Parvan. Yudhishthira sends Drishtadyumna to fight Droṇa, which is his destiny. Who's Drishtadyumna? Remember I told a story about how Drupada hates Droṇa, and so he did a ritual to create a son who would be able to kill Droṇa, and he creates this ritual and he does this fire ritual, and out of the flames come Drishtadyumna, who is prophesied by the gods to kill Droṇa. Also out of that ritual comes Draupadi, his sister, and a spectral voice says, from the actions around this woman, this beautiful woman Draupadi, all the kṣatriyas will be killed. Well, things are difficult. Krishna advises the Pandavas that if there's even half a day of battle with Droṇa in the ranks, all the Pandavas will be killed. The only way to beat him is to trick him. So what do? Bhīṣma goes and kills an elephant by the name of Ashwatthama. Droṇa has a son named Ashwatthama. Yudhishthira, who is said to never be able to tell a lie, lies and says that Ashwatthama has been killed. Droṇa, thinking his son is dead, loses his will to live, and he sits down. Dhriṭradyumna comes by, cuts down his weapons. Bhīṣma actually, while Droṇa is sitting there, his weapons removed, confronts him, and Bhīṣma says this to Droṇa: "Wretched are the Brahmins who, not content with the avocations of their order, have become well-versed in arms and taken to fighting. But for them, the kṣatriya order is said to be the highest of all virtues. The brahmana is the root of all virtue. You, Droṇa, are supposed to be the best of the brahmanas. And yet you fight while your son lies dead on the field of battle, unknown to you and behind your back. Yudhishthira has just told you this. It behooves you not to doubt this fact." So Bhīṣma is saying, your son is really dead, even though he knows that he just killed an elephant. In some recensions, it says that when Yudhishthira uttered this lie, he says, "Ashwatthama, the elephant, has been killed." But Droṇa doesn't know this, and Yudhishthira has lied. Droṇa begins to engage in yoga. Again, engaging in a yoga, probably hitching his mind to the solar orb, going to the lands of the dead who are glorious warriors. Dhriṭradyumna comes forward and beheads him. Sketchmo. He doesn't just let him there to die on his own doing this yoga. He comes by and just straight up kills him, cuts his head off. Sketchmo again. Due to this lie, in fact, Yudhishthira's chariot, Yudhishthira, the Dharmaraj, the Yamaraj, Yudhishthira, the great lord who can never tell a lie, his chariot used to hover 4 inches above the ground. After this lie, becomes a normal chariot. Just a normal chariot, just a normal king. Because the once always truthful has lied. This is the difficulty of this text. Now we're into the Karna Parvan, because our Droṇa has died. Who was Karna? Remember, Karna is the son of the sun. He is the 6th Pandava that Kunti had via her mantra in order to have a child with the sun. Karna is the most tragic figure of all of this, because he could live with his brothers, but his loyalty and his righteousness prevents him from ever betraying Duryodhana, who has always been good to him. Well, Karna is installed the leader of the Kauravas. We are now on the 16th day. During the 16th day, there are many, many duels and much death. And the sun, in fact, hides itself because it does not want to witness what is to come. Now, another little backstory on Karna. Karna tells a story about how he gained a powerful weapon. He gained that weapon by posing as a Brahmin and serving this warrior god named Parashurama. Parashurama means the Rama with the axe. This is the incarnation of Vishnu before Rama with the bow of the Ramayana, and Krishna here, Krishna with the flute. So this is an even prior incarnation of Vishnu, who's still lurking around. And Parashurama's a bad mofo. All right, so Karna is posing as a Brahmin, and he's serving Parashurama as Parashurama is doing all these ascetic stuff and sacrifices and whatnot. However, when the god Parashurama finds out that Karna is actually a kṣatriya, he curses him. He curses him and says that whenever he needs this great weapon that Parashurama has given him, it's called the Brahmastra, it would be forgotten when he needs it most. Also, in many of his travels, Karna accidentally killed the sacrificial cow of a Brahmin. He makes remand for this sin, but the Brahmin has already cursed him and says that when he needs it most, in his most important battle, his chariot will become stuck in the mud and will become disabled. Karna is cursed, and Arjuna is going to kill him, and that curse is going to help out. Arjuna and Karna battle with dangerous magical weapons. These are the most extreme magical weapons that have been exchanged so far. Karna, in fact, casts this really powerful weapon that he got from the race of the snakes. Now, remember, the snakes don't like Arjuna because Arjuna killed all those snakes with Agni and Krishna when they were burning down the forest. Anyway, so Arjuna is in battle. Karna casts this powerful snake-like weapon, but he misses it, in fact, and it hits Arjuna's crown and knocks his crown off. And that weapon becomes this deadly snake. The weapon is described as a snake, and the snakes are said that say that they hate Arjuna due to the killing of their mother when Arjuna and Krishna and Agni razed the forest. Arjuna slays the snake under the advice of Krishna. Everything's done under the advice of Krishna. Remember, Krishna, God, is advising them on all of this and advising their sketchy behavior. They push forward in battle, but Karna's chariot becomes stuck in the mud. It's as if the mud has reached up, the earth has reached up to hold his chariot tight. Karna decides that he must cast this Parashurama weapon in order to finally kill Arjuna, but he can't remember how to do it. Suddenly he starts yelling and screaming. He says, I am righteous. My righteousness will not protect me. Arjuna taunts him and says, how are you righteous? Look at all the horrible things you've done up to this. You forced this to happen. You tried to kill us. You didn't stop it when they, tried to defile Draupadi. You have been behind all of this. How can you even say that you are righteous? Arjuna charges his bow and arrow with mantras, and he disposes his fierce arrow. And I quote, fierce and efficacious as the rite prescribed in the Atharva of Angirasa, the invincible against the god of death in battle. This means that he takes all of these magical spells from the Atharva Veda, that fourth Veda that's filled with all sorts of practical and black magic. And he charges up an arrow with it, and he shoots Karna. He beheads Karna, and a brilliant light emanates from that hero villain. The fallen Kaurava is dead, and even unbeknownst to him, Arjuna has killed his own brother. Now we're to the Śalya Parvan, named after Śalya. You remember that Śalya was a pal of the Pandavas, but he was tricked by Duryodhana so that he had to fight with the Kauravas. Yudhishthira gets a powerful magic weapon, and he sends it out, and it kills Śalya almost immediately. The tides have turned. The Kauravas don't have a leader. Duryodhana sends in all of his troops, and they are just all slaughtered. We are at the end of the battle here. There are very, very few Kauravas left. At this point, Duryodhana flees. It's chaos. Everyone is dying. Duryodhana is off. He runs off and he hides in a lake. He bewitches the lake using his own magical powers. This is interesting, in fact, because yakshas, these terrifying and immensely powerful creatures that live in the wilderness, often live in lakes. Duryodhana is acting like a wild creature. And in fact, these wild creatures are some of the earliest figures we find worshipped in Hinduism. Krishna tells Yudhishthira to use his own magic to reveal Duryodhana. And they speak. And there are earlier stories that you kind of saw in the movie where yakshas from under the lake will actually speak to these heroes. Duryodhana says that all his friends are dead, that the Pandavas can have this world. He's sick of it. He doesn't want to live in it anymore without his friends, and he will retire to the forest. Yudhishthira states very clearly, he's like, you ain't giving me nothing. I don't want this world if it's granted by you. You're done, hombre. Dictated by Krishna, Yudhishthira says, you can pick one person to battle with. And if he wins, that person will gain the kingdom. Or hold on, let me put it another way. Duryodhana is going to enter into combat. If Duryodhana wins, Yudhishthira says, fine, we'll give you back all your kingdoms. If you lose, you're going to go to heaven. It's a win-win situation for you, but we're having this out here. We're done with your business. Duryodhana says he will fight whomever is willing to battle with him, but the only weapon he'll use is a mace, a big club. Bhīṣma is the only one that's capable of fighting Duryodhana, but Duryodhana is more skilled. He's been practicing on an iron doll, a giant iron figure, for 13 years. Bhīṣma might be stronger, but Duryodhana is more skilled, and he's going to have to cheat if he wants to win. The two battle for an incredibly long time. In fact, they have to take breaks. And eventually, Krishna tells Arjuna that Bhīma is going to have to cheat if he wants to win. As they fight, Arjuna motions to his own leg, arguing, you need to strike Duryodhana in the thighs. Remember, battling someone, you can't strike below their navel. The navel is the line. So it's a low blow. What happens is, as Duryodhana advances, Bhīma throws his club and shatters the thighs of Duryodhana. Remember that Bhīma had said, I will break those thighs. I will break your thigh because you showed your thigh to my wife. I will break those thighs. So it has a certain irony here. Bhīma makes good on his threat, and it's an illegal blow below the navel. Duryodhana is furious as he lies, his legs broken, at this unfair behavior. And Bhīma even comes forward and kicks his head with his left foot, the most inglorious and rude thing a warrior can do. In fact, Balarama, who is Krishna's older brother, shows up, and he was the one who trained both Duryodhana and Bhīma and how to fight with the mace. He shows up and says, this is bullshit. Duryodhana is glorious. What Bhīma did, may he be known forever as a cheater and a bad man. However, Krishna defends all of these corrupt actions. He says that the behavior of all these Kauravas, especially Duryodhana, brought this upon them. That if they'd just been good and hadn't cheated and hadn't lied and hadn't stolen from the Pandavas, none of this would have happened. Eventually, Duryodhana will die a warrior's death. Not quite yet. And flowers will rain down from the sky. Krishna consoles the Pandava boys, saying that the gods did the same sort of cheating moves when they had to fight the anti-gods in the days of old. Victory is justice. Victory is essential at all costs. Krishna returns to the town of Hastinapura, and he begins to comfort the parents of the fallen Kauravas. He comforts blind Dhritarashtra and blindfolded Gandhari. He notes that their sons did not heed the warnings that they said, because Dhritarashtra and Gandhari said to their sons over and over and over again, make peace, don't do this, bad things are gonna happen. He also says, Krishna also says that the Pandava brothers will surely perform all of the appropriate last rites and mortuary rituals for the dead. He especially tells Gandhari, their mother, let not your heart be bent on the destruction of the Pandavas. I know that because of the power of your penance, an angry look by you can consume the entire earth. She says that Krishna has calmed her. She says that her and the king's only solace will be in Krishna and the Pandavas. Note this fear over the curse of a woman, especially one who has lost her children. I personally live in fear of the curse of all women, but you should especially be wary the curse of a woman whose sons have been killed. Suddenly, Krishna knows that something terrible is afoot, and he rushes back to the Pandavas. And now we're into the Sauptika Parvan. So this particular book, the last book that we're going to look at, translates something to like the book of the sleepers, or those who are sleeping. And it's a story of something really, really horrible. And we're going to hear about it. So there are only 3 Kauravas left. Duryodhana is still on his deathbed, and there are only 3 Kauravas left alive. They are Ashwatthama, the son of Droṇa, Kripa, whose name means compassion, strangely, and Kritavarma, the one who increases goodness by his actions. This is all kind of ironic. The 3 of them have run off into the wilderness, and while they're there, they come up with a plan. Kripa and Kritavarma have fallen asleep. Ashwatthama witnesses an owl who kills tons and tons and tons of crows while they're asleep. Now, crows and owls are natural enemies in Indian literature, consistently. Ashwatthama and his pals decide to sneak into the Pandava camp after everyone is asleep and kill everyone in sight. They justify these dirty actions by the actions of the Pandavas before. Ashwatthama attacks in the night. He attacks the tired. He attacks the sleeping. He attacks those who have withdrawn from battle. He's doing everything that you're not supposed to do in proper combat. The text describes him stalking through the camp at night, stalking like that owl, killing all the crows while they sleep. Kripa and Kritavarma wait outside the camp and they kill everyone who flees Ashwatthama. And then they set fire to the camp and they kill everybody who rushes out as they're burning. Ashwatthama kills the whole army. He kills all of Draupadi's sons. The text once again describes this as being like offering the lives into the sacrificial fire. And in the end, the three of them go to tell Duryodhana what they have done, how they've killed all of the Pandavas. In fact, the last of the kṣatriyas, the blood is covering them. And now the only people that are left are the 5 Pandava brothers. We will see Abhimanyu's son in one way. There's only 7 Pandavas left, 7 left total of the Pandava clan. Of the Kauravas, there are only 3. In total, that's 10. That's it. That's all who have left. All of them live childless. All of their children have been killed. And now, the worst of things. This is rough. I hate this part. It's rough. Draupadi is mad with rage and grief for all her children. All her children from all of her husbands have been killed. And she says Yudhishthira must go and kill Ashwatthama, the son of Droṇa. He must be killed. And in fact, he has a jewel that is in his head, that he was born with a jewel in his head, and she wants that jewel. Arjuna, Bhīṣma, and Yudhishthira go after Ashwatthama, and they find him. He's meditating in a hermit's grove. Who is the hermit? Vyasa, the author. Ashwatthama is there dressed only in kusha grass, this holy grass, and his body is covered in butter. It's as if he's almost getting ready for what's coming. The heroes rush Ashwatthama, and Ashwatthama takes a blade of that kusha grass and he infuses it with the most powerful of mantras ever known. This mantra is like the god of death at the end of time, at the end of the pralaya, at the time that everything becomes nothing and the cycles of time will restart. He casts it out. Krishna turns to Arjuna and he says, there is a spell and a weapon that you've learned from Droṇa and you need to use it right now. This weapon will neutralize all of Ashwatthama's weapon. Those 2 weapons meet and they are casting out so much energy as action and counteraction happen that it will destroy the entire earth. In fact, between those 2 weapons, 2 sages, 2 holy men, 2 celestial rishis or seers stop them. In fact, it's Vyasa, the author, and Narada, who is at the heart of all men. And they prevent that energy from exploding outward. They're holding it, keeping the world from ending. In fact, I picked this image here, which reads in Hindi, Arjuna aur Ashwatthama ka ghor yudha. And this is the horrible battle, the horrible fight between Ashwatthama and Arjuna. Arjuna withdraws his weapon. Vyasa told him, pull your weapon back. But Ashwatthama cannot withdraw his. Vyasa says, whoa, buddy, you gotta pull this weapon back or it's gonna destroy everything. And you need to give the Pandavas that jewel in your head and they'll let you live. He can't do it. And the most horrible of horribles happens. Ashwatthama casts that horrible weapon into the wombs of all the Kshatriya women. Any fetus that is living inside its mother dies. And all of the Kshatriya women, all of them due to this weapon, are now sterile and barren. There will be no more Kshatriyas born. As a result of all of this stuff, the Kshatriyas are done. It is genocide. There will be no more Kshatriya children. It's over. Ashwatthama leaves to wander the earth for 3,000 years, a murderer of children. Maybe he's still out there. Bhīṣma gets the gem from his head, gives it to Draupadi. Draupadi puts it in his crown and Yudhishthira's crown, and Yudhishthira rules, the last king. However, Krishna is still there. Krishna declares that one child, one fetus, the child of Abhimanyu, the son of Arjuna, may die, but will come back to life. And he will live a long life. He will carry on the race. And who is that king? King Parikshit. King Parikshit, who was wandering in the forest and took the snake and put it over the head of the ascetic. And then he was killed by a snake. And his very son, Janamejaya, is the one who started the snake sacrifice that is the event of telling this whole story. King Parikshit will be killed by a snake, but his son Janamejaya, who will be the great-grandson of Arjuna, lives on. Ashwatthama wanders the earth. He will know no companion for thousands of years. Sort of like the mark of Cain, if you remember Cain and Abel. So, we're at the end. What are the spoils of this? What's the end of things? Well, the kingdom of the Pandavas is restored. They get everything back. Whatever. Everybody's dead. Victory is justice, if you want to call it that. Everybody's dead. All the Kshatriya women are barren. This is why I tell the story. And when people say, what's the point of the Mahābhārata to me? And I say, maximum tragedy, minimum grace. It's cold comfort that the Kshatriyas go on based on one fetus left, one person left, one Kshatriya left. Maximum tragedy, minimum grace. Where's my last slide? Hold on. My last slide says, it all burns. It's all over. It's as if there was a great fire and it consumed all of the Kshatriyas. Our story isn't over. We have a little bit more to go that we'll do in our next lecture. But I just want you to think about how the jealousy of Duryodhana, the haughtiness of the Pandavas, the confusion, the tragedies, the honor that was ill-placed, all of this has led to this last point when everybody's dead and all the women are barren. And it's a sad, sad story. I'll tell you the end of it on the next time. All right, y'all. I'll catch you on the flip side.